Hey, so I want to talk about our next lesson in our lectures is on time management. So time management is crucial to campaigns and how campaigns run. So just to give you an idea of what I mean by time management. So there's lots of elements that could be called time management: how you manage your time, how the project's timeline is managed, how the items that are supposed to be accomplished or the tasks that are supposed to be accomplished at certain times are managed, how the actual length of the campaign is managed. All of those things can tend to fall under the time management headline. So I'm going to break it down into smaller components. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way that you can formally organize your steps and the procedures that need to happen in order for a campaign to launch. So if you think about a campaign, like I'm going to use the analogy of opening up a restaurant. And, in a restaurant, you have certain tasks that need to be completed before that restaurant happens, right? You don't just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to open up this restaurant. You actually have to, go look at a building, you have to finalize a menu, you have to do tastings, you have to do all these things that lead up to actually launching or opening the restaurant. Now, the same thing is true with campaigns. You don't just wake up and say, I think I'll do this campaign, and then launch it. There are lots of steps involved, and many times more than one person is involved in these steps, so it's very crucial to not only manage your time effectively, but to lay out a timeline so others can manage their time effectively as well. One of the biggest, or I guess I shouldn't say biggest, one of the more popular ways of doing this is what's known as a Gantt chart, G-A-N-T-T, I believe. So a Gantt chart actually is, if you think about it, it's a bar chart flipped on its side. And the tasks that need to be completed, that's going along the vertical axis, and the timeline for when you need those tasks completed goes on the horizontal axis. So a Gantt chart is great for scheduling multiple people that are working on one project, or even just scheduling yourself on one project, because it gives you an idea, a visual representation of what you need to do and when that task needs to be completed. And Gantt charts are great. The thing about Gantt charts is, especially the more involved they get, you got to really make sure you keep them organized, and you have to update your Gantt charts depending on, let's say, something was supposed to be completed week 1 and it doesn't get completed week 1. Well, you need to update your Gantt chart to then move that bar out a little further, so you know that yes, this hasn't been completed. Also, color coding is a big deal with Gantt charts, especially if there's several different tasks that need to be completed, different categories, and it's just a system of organizing your thoughts, organizing others, making sure everybody's on time with tasks, and it's a nice visual representation. And so with data, all graphs are bar charts, pie charts, whatever type of graph you're talking about, all those really are visual representations of data. So you have numbers and they mean something, put them into a visual format. That's the same thing with a Gantt chart. You have numbers and you have times, you have tasks, all of those things mean something, so put it into a chart form so that your data has visual representation. So let's talk more about other types of time management. You yourself need to understand time management as a person. This is extremely difficult for some people, and for some people and for others it's very easy. I'm always amazed at those people who can, someone will say, hey, next Tuesday, don't forget we have a pizza party or something like that, and that person never has to write anything down, and they just remember. That is not how my brain works at all. I have to write down everything, and even then it's a little sketchy as to whether or not I remember to complete it. So the biggest thing that I found, I struggled with this for so many years. So I used to teach 5th grade. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math, and I taught high school, and I was a high school guidance counselor. And in all of those different positions, I had to be extremely organized, which is not my natural gift. So I couldn't understand how to do it. My brain didn't work that way. It felt like wearing shoes that didn't fit all the time. I always felt like I just wasn't able to make it happen. And my mother-in-law is extremely organized, and it just seemed like everything came so naturally to her, and I just would get so frustrated. And she said, she said something pretty profound to me. She told me, you organize how your brain works. My brain works this way. You organize how your brain works. And honestly, that was the best advice I've ever gotten, because I never took into consideration that I should make my system match my thought process and how my brain reacts. And I was trying to fit a system for another person's brain, and that wasn't helpful. So now I've finally developed a system that works most of the time for me. Again, I still struggle, but I don't feel bad that my system, doesn't look like everybody else's. And I'm going to walk through my system with you all so you can kind of see what I mean by the difference in thought process and how I accomplish tasks and how I try to get things done. With yourselves, again, I remember struggling with this, especially in college, especially going into the work world. When you have, like, let's say big projects due, don't start the week before. Don't start, the day of. If you have the capabilities, start a couple of weeks in advance. And try and get ahead on that. I know that's easier said than done. I don't think I ever took that advice when I was in college, and it, usually related to me just staying up the night before and trying to finish it all at once, which surprisingly worked out most of the time, but there was those couple of times where it didn't work out. All I'm saying is, figure out yourself. You may know already a system that works for you. If you don't, it's okay. Just keep searching for that system. I actually was so upset that I just could not get organized. Nothing made sense to me. That the video that I have in this week's lecture as well, it's Alejandra, I don't want to say her name wrong, I want to say Costello maybe. And I actually signed up for her organizational course because I thought, surely someone teaches organization. It can't just be you're born with it or you're not. Someone has to teach it. So I signed up for her course. I paid $100, and at the time that was just so much money to me. And I went through her organizational course, and I realized a lot of things about myself, and I realized how I needed to, again, make my system fit my brain. Keeping up with the system is difficult as well, but the first thing is to make sure that you can fit all of the items that you need to accomplish and, or prioritize all of those things and have it represent something visually for you if you're a visual person, or if you like in writing, or if you like to put it in your phone, or if you like to write it in your planner. There are multiple ways people organize their thoughts, but the biggest thing is you need to organize your thoughts somehow. If you're just kind of hoping that you just remember what you're supposed to remember when you're supposed to remember it, 9 times out of 10 that isn't going to work. So you need to develop a system that works for you. Alright, so the final thing we're going to talk about is project timelines. So with campaigns, there are certain times that you're going to run a campaign. Some campaigns that we've looked at have ran for years. The I always laugh at it, but it's the Energizer no, oh goodness, I'm getting it wrong. I'm thinking of Bunny. It is the Cadbury Bunny. See word association? It's really weird. The Cadbury Bunny. And it's this commercial advertisement that's been going, I don't even know. It's got to been since the 90s, and it's this lion and he's wearing bunny ears, and it's all these several different types of animals, like a llama, all these different types of animals, and they're wearing bunny ears, and they're all saying everybody wants to be a Cadbury Bunny, but there's only one Cadbury Bunny. It's just the oldest commercial, but I love it. There are commercials that are advertisements as part of campaigns. You know, campaigns don't have to just be advertisements, and honestly, they don't have to be advertisements at all. Campaigns can be activities, they can be events. All of those can go into a campaign. Campaigns are messages, so however you want to get that message out is up to you. It could be through a race, a 5K. It can be through marketing materials like flyers, posters. It can be through social media campaigns, you know, posting lots of social media messages. It can be a mixture of all of those things. It can be advertisements on TV. It can be print advertisements. All of those things can be encompassed within a campaign. So think about that as well. But you know, with campaigns, sometimes you want them to run for a very long period of time, and sometimes you want them to run for a short period of time. For example, if you are wanting, if you own a diamond store and you want men to know that you have the most unique engagement rings for weddings or for engagements, and you want to run an advertisement because you know that most men tend to buy their engagement rings, or I shouldn't say just men, most men or women tend to buy their engagement rings, you know, around big holidays. Maybe it's because they just got a Christmas bonus, maybe it's because it's easier, you know, with all the romanticism of Valentine's Day. But you know that as a campaign manager for a diamond company. So you're going to run a Valentine's campaign. Well, it doesn't make sense to run that Valentine's campaign all the way through July 1st, does it? I mean, I see a lot of campaigns that they forget to take down their messages, and they say, you know, February 14th, come in for steak and lobster, and it's, you know, March. And it makes them sound really, really weird. So think about your timeline of how long you want the campaign to run. Do you want it to run for 2 weeks, 2 years, a couple of months? Think about those items when you're planning your campaign, because all of that goes into how much budget you have. That all is determined by the amount of resources you have available, the budget you have available. All of those things are very important to consider. Again, it's like a restaurant. You don't just launch a restaurant and say, okay, good job, restaurant, go forth and make money. That's not how it works. A campaign has to be tended to. It has to be managed. You can't just create it and say, good job, now I'm going to run you on some ads and there you go. It's gotta have a purpose and a length of time in order to be very successful.